Hello everyone, welcome to our webcast today, What's New in the Vehicle Tracking 2018.1 Update. My name is Eric Chappell, Civil Community Evangelist for Autodesk, and with me today is Nigel Peters, the star of our show, product owner for Autodesk Vehicle Tracking. Before we get to Nigel's presentation, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our webcast series, in case you're new to it. This is something we try to do twice per month, first and third Wednesdays of the month. And if possible, we like to have guests from the product team visit us and talk about things that are going on with specific products. And today is a perfect example of that. You couldn't be hearing about AVT from a better person than Nigel, so it's going to be a very insightful and informative presentation. The goal of the series generally, and we've been running this now for 2.5 years. In the spring, it'll be 3 years. We really want to just give you information about what's going on with our civil products from the perspective of the product team. You know, we know you want to hear it from the horse's mouth as far as what's going on with our civil products. It's also a chance for you to ask questions and provide some feedback. I'll give you a little more details about that in a moment. And just generally speaking, we want to bring you folks, the users of our civil products, closer to the folks who make the products. Our next webcast, by the way, will be in, I believe that's 2 weeks from now. Yes, Wednesday, October 18th. Charlie Ogden is going to be here, also from the product team, and he's going to talk to you about the parts editor. A few months ago, maybe, probably close to 2 months ago, we talked about the parts editor as being available for InfraWorks, and now guess what? It also applies to Civil 3D as well. So if you have an interest in how to create custom storm parts for your InfraWorks models or Civil 3D projects, this is going to be a very useful, practical session for you to attend. So definitely be on the lookout for information on how to register. If you're here today, or if you know someone who's been on a previous webcast, we more than likely have the ability to email you the information on upcoming webcasts, so you'll see that information in your email. Or if not, you can check the InfraWorks community site, the forum, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We post all over the place upcoming registration information for upcoming webcasts. So be on the lookout for that. It'll be coming out shortly. We want to know what you want to see in this webcast series, so if you have any ideas or requests of future webcast topics, please enter them into the questions window. If you don't have any ideas now, but one pops in later on, feel free to just throw it in there and let us know that it's an idea for an upcoming webcast. But we would love for you guys to pick the topics so that we're sure that we're showing information that you want to see. Want to make sure everyone's aware of our new Civil Engineering Community Center. This is a really awesome website, very proud of it, very excited about it. It's a central hub for all kinds of information relating to our products. It automatically feeds in the forum and gallery and ideas. There's constantly updated information on news stories, tips and tricks. If you want to find out like when the next release of one of our products is coming out, this is one of the first places it's going to show up. If you want to get tips and tricks on how to use our products, you're going to find it here, and not just from us. You're going to find information from other users like yourselves. So it truly is a community environment where you're getting information and insight from all different sources, not just Autodesk. And what makes it unique and different from other sites is that it's up to date current information, stuff that's been posted maybe in the last hour or the last day or week. So everything up there is really fresh and new, and it's a site you want to bookmark and check daily or even more often, because you're always going to find something new up there that relates to Autodesk products, civil products specifically. I don't believe Nigel's going to talk about anything in preview or labs or anything that's a future feature, but just in case it comes up in conversation, we want you to know that any talk about features that we're working on but haven't been released, there's no guarantee that those features will be in the software until you actually see them in a supported version of the software. So don't make any purchasing decisions based on forward-looking information or features that we're working on. We encourage you to ask lots of questions. Unfortunately, we've got a really big group, so we can't open the phone lines to ask those questions verbally, but there is a questions window, and you are welcome and encouraged to enter your questions in the window. I'm going to be monitoring that while Nigel speaks, and I will kind of make a collection of those, and we'll interrupt him at times throughout the webcast and maybe at the end as well to give him an opportunity to answer those questions. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Nigel. Nigel, you now have presenter status.
Okay, so I'm Nigel Peters. I'm speaking from the UK. I am the product owner of Vehicle Tracking, and the product owner role in Autodesk is I'm the person who decides what work we're working on and what's going to be launched in the product. I've been working with Vehicle Tracking and its preceding technology for a very long time. So, first of all, update 1, I would like to stress, and I can't stress enough, update 1 for Vehicle Tracking also applies for AutoCAD Civil 3D users. So if you are a Civil 3D user or a Vehicle Tracking user, Autodesk desktop application will inform you that the update is available. It came out a week ago, so people are starting to download it as we speak. All the roundabout changes I am discussing today apply to Civil 3D users. There are a few other changes that just apply to Vehicle Tracking users, but the roundabout changes apply to Vehicle Tracking and to Civil 3D, and Vehicle Tracking running in AutoCAD and of course in MicroStation. Sadly, because of the scope and area of changes, we had to make a file format change. So this is a mid-year file format change. It only affects Vehicle Tracking objects and roundabouts. It does not affect any native Civil 3D objects. It does change the roundabouts in Civil 3D. If you open an update 1 drawing in standard Civil 3D 2018 or with standard Vehicle Tracking 2018, you will get a warning about proxy objects, and the objects will stay as proxy. They're not destroyed, they're not changed or lost. As soon as you upgrade to update 1 or open it on a machine with upgrade 1, the objects will become editable again. I would also point out, because of the file format change, we have reduced the file size that a roundabout takes to store in the drawing by approximately 10%. Can I just check? Eric, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. I will respond to that comment.
Okay, so the majority of the changes we have done for Vehicle Tracking in the last 6 months have been geometric changes to roundabouts. The key area of focus has been roundabouts. We have made changes in the rest of the product, but our focus has been to carry on work with the roundabout geometry. So the key areas we've worked on are, 1, we have taken the 2D slip lanes that were released in Vehicle Tracking 2018 and made them 3-dimensional. So you can define cross slope on the slip lane region. You can define in 3 key areas where the crossfall and cross slope starts and transitions, and you can define the change in elevation of the slip lane relative to the roundabout itself. We have changed the adjusted alignment. So when the roundabout is defined, the approach road has a new adjusted centerline alignment based on the rules. That adjusted alignment is a spiral or a curve in 2018. We have added the ability for the end nearest the roundel to be a straight line. So We have a transition arc or spiral and then a straight line coming up to the roundel. And that applies to both roundabouts with no deflection on the incoming road, or if deflection, positive or negative, has been applied to the incoming road. Next, we had quite a few values that were defined to be measured from the blend point. The blend point we define as the point of the road that the engine takes control of calculating the roundabout. It didn't make sense to define these from the blend point where you added a slip lane, which of course makes the road that we're controlling a lot further away from the roundel. So we've changed the key the key dimensions that we think are appropriate so that are now measured as an offset from the roundabout. So you can say the slip lane now starts 100 meters from the roundabout and not 10 meters from the blend point, which just happens to be wherever I picked in the drawing. And finally, we had a few crown line issues on the roundel area. In particular, island-to-island crown lines, which are used for mini roundabouts. It was possible to select an island-to-island crowning and have Stockdale applied to it, or have a secondary circular crown line inside the roundel area. We removed that ability. It doesn't conform to any standards in particular. It was put in almost by mistake, and we've removed it. So if you open an old drawing that has Stockdale on an island-to-island roundabout or an inner crown line on the roundabout, they will get removed. So the next section is major changes to the roundabout functionality. We have improved the dimensioning when editing roundabouts using grips. We had quite a few cases where we were showing a length along an alignment and we were actually drawing it just as a straight line distance. So we've changed that so wherever a length is measured along along an arc or a curve and we were dimensioning it, it is now correctly dimensioned along that arc or alignment or curve. We've also made some improvements in the design check feature. So now every relevant dimension or specification in the standard that supplies a min and max range is now checked and is displayed as a warning symbol when it goes out of range. There were a few cases where either we were checking things that were disabled because you disabled that option in your particular style of roundabout, so we're putting warning symbols up that didn't apply, and a couple of the warning symbols were missed. So we've now gone through every single one and made sure that all the design checks for all the parameters in the standard are actually checked and conformed to. We've also expanded and improved the printing of standards. And because of the rewrite of a lot of the work, we have improved performance. The roundabout calculation is probably 50 or 2 times faster, 2 to 3 times faster, and the file size is 10% smaller. In addition to that, we have gone through the backlog and gone through user-reported defects, and we've fixed about 50 defects and enhancements to the roundabout calculation this release. Please see the README that comes with the download to see the full list of the areas impacted. Okay, the big majority of the work that affects Civil 3D users, and this is only really in Civil 3D, is we have pretty much totally rewritten the way we generate the roundabout corridor. We've simplified the options so that we no longer allow you to specify if the corridor regions are built inwards or outwards. We pick the sensible direction to build the corridor region for each of the regions. We've added more regions. We've speeded it up. We have added support for slip lanes. We've split the whole roundabout into multiple regions. So we no longer have overlapping alignments. And I'm going to go for each of these changes as an individual slide because they're key and they're quite important. But the roundabout corridor is very, very close to what you'd expect. So roundel, crown and slip lanes, again, we have now changed the corridor so that you can generate the corridor regardless of the crown lines you're using on the roundel region. So we now support all the modes, which are roundels with no crown line, so a mini roundabout with no crown line, just cross full or cross slope. Roundels with 1 or 2 circular crown lines, island to island crown lines, and for roundabouts using Stockdale method of merging the crown lines for the incoming roads and exits. They are all now supported and all work for within the corridor model that we're producing. Again, iterate. The corridor now includes slip lanes, and those slip lanes include cross slope and elevations. The only issue is with missing area on the slip lane within the corridor is we leave a hole in the corridor region where the slip lane island is located. We haven't quite worked out how to create the island. A similar issue occurs and has always occurred with the splitter islands. We have a few ideas, but we haven't got a solution that is generic enough to work. But we do create the corridor surface between the edge of travel ways throughout the entire roundabout region, and from the outside of the edge of travel way, curb and night and day or cut and fill. Said earlier, we have the old roundabout had a single baseline for each arm, starting at the blend point and going round the roundel and out for the exit. We've now split the baseline into a minimum of 3 and sometimes 11 baselines. The worst case is if you've got Stockdale, when you actually end up with 11 baselines per arm. And because the baselines are smaller, they merge correctly. We have no overlapping regions. We have no shared profiles. Each baseline and each alignment is created with its own single profile and a existing ground profile. We have pretty much eliminated the bumpy overlapping regions. So on the pictures here, we're showing, because we were sharing overlapping alignments, the 2018 release had bumps all the way down the road. In some cases, it wasn't always there, but it was fairly easy to get to occur. They have gone. We also, because of the targeting of the baselines, had a few issues at the blend point end of the road. Again, they have gone. And we've resolved our biggest area of issues, which were with cul-de-sacs or dead-end roads where you're placing a roundabout at the end of a road to allow vehicles to turn. Single-arm roads now work well. I think we've resolved all the outstanding defects on that with this release. So hopefully we have covered a lot of the concerns users were having with the corridor. As I said, it's been our biggest focus, this release. I was just going to say, before I come off roundabouts, are there any questions on that?
So far, Nigel, you're good to go. We haven't had anything really related to the new functionality. We've had some other random questions that I've been able to handle so far.
Okay.
Keep on rolling.
I'll keep on rolling. I'm going to do a demo at the end, but I'm probably just going to finish the slides and then do a 5 or 10 minute quick live demo.
Fantastic.
So the next area we concentrated on is swept paths. We did a few enhancements, wish list items, and fixed a few defects. So there are some changes. we had an issue where the ground clearance, vertical clearance report was placing warning symbols in the drawing, but they weren't showing up on the design check. So we've now extended the design check to list all the ground clearance warnings that were showing up when you do a ground clearance report. We have fixed a couple of issues and made some improvements and layout changes on printing of vehicles so that they work better and more relevant information is displayed when you print a vehicle specification. A minor annoyance that we fixed in the advanced vehicle editor, if you hit the return key or enter key, the dialog box just closed. It's been reported by a few users. We've resolved it. It was a very minor change, but it makes using the advanced editor a lot easier. And we've changed some of the fields in the advanced editor, so we disabled and removed values that are not applicable. So the issue was here, we had a whole load of values that we were showing for pendle and other types of axles that had no meaning for most vehicles. And in a couple of cases, they contained values that were misleading. So we've removed those or totally disabled the fields in the advanced editor. And finally, we had an issue with evenly spaced rear axles that affected all vehicles, but in the libraries we shipped only affected 22 aircraft. The error was such on those aircraft that the swept paths actually produced slightly worse turning circles, slightly less severe turning circles than the vehicles could actually do. But we've fixed the issue, and we don't believe that any of the drawings that had used the wrong or invalid aircraft were actually producing data that was impossible for the plane to do. The other area we worked on was settings and a few other items. System settings, if you made a change to the system settings to say I only want to load these libraries or I want to work in a different language, they weren't saved unless you hit the Make Default button. If you just okayed the dialog box, the setting was accepted and changed for that session, but the next time you started vehicle tracking, the setting went back to the original value. So we changed that requirement. Make Default is just implied and is hit and accepted for any system setting change. They're saved automatically and they will apply for the current session and for any future times you load vehicle tracking and run it. The other issue we had was there's an option to get values from drawing that applies to both MicroStation and Civil 3D. That value didn't quite shut down some of the report settings. So in Civil 3D, we're able to get, if you're working in US units or metric, and we're able to work out the reporting units you're using and whether or not you're driving on the left or right. The issues here was the option was only really available on the advanced settings panel, and the reporting dialog boxes allowed you to change the values, but the next time you ran a report, they just went back to the ones from the drawing. So we've done some work to tidy that up, and we've moved that option to both the introduction dialog box and the settings wizard, as well as where its original location in the advanced settings. And finally, on the enhancements, we have changed all the standards and vehicle libraries and roundabout standards and parking standard editors to allow you to add notes at any level in the tree. So a note is just a folder in the tree that has a different icon, so you can actually create a notes folder and put vehicles in it, but it's for adding notes. So that finishes the work that allows you to define the web page the document came from, the actual notes and assumptions you've made when you define the vehicle from the standard, and a picture of the document, and a URL from where it came from. So now we believe that you can fully document any vehicles you define and any standards you add. We have also improved and fixed several vehicles in the library. The most noticeable fix is one of the Indian vehicles was a single vehicle that actually had 3 units. A single united vehicle had 3 units. What had happened was, in one of the earlier edits, someone had joined 2 vehicles together. We have also, because we've changed the roundabout standards, we have allowed or set some sensible defaults, or what we think are sensible, but please go and check that they're okay, for the new stuff we've added, like slip lanes. We will be having some work on some country kits, but I don't know when that's going to happen. Okay, so the last bit is, where can you get it? Well, Autodesk desktop application will be notifying you of the download, or you can go to your manage.autodesk.com and log in and go to your software updates, and you should be able to download it from there. So Eric, have I got any questions?
Yes, we do have a few. First one was, were cul-de-sacs available in previous versions of AVT?
So cul-de-sacs have been available in vehicle tracking, yes. They've been available in all releases. You've always been able to create a single arm roundabout. There aren't any explicit cul-de-sac standards. The best one to use is the generic single lane roundabout, because generally cul-de-sacs don't have an island in the middle for the turning circle. They were supported in the corridor model, but we had a few issues on the exit side with the crossfall and for the 3-dimensional version. All those issues, I believe, have now been solved.
Okay. Another question, was anything done to expand, or are there any plans to expand the U.S. vehicle library?
Right, so I know that there is a wish list item for the US vehicle library. In the later versions of AASHTO, there are 2 sets, I believe, of each type of vehicle, and we have defined the one has a smaller turning circle than the other set for each vehicle. The vehicles in our library have the larger of the 2 turning circles. I don't know of any new libraries that are available. If anyone on the call knows of any standards that we are missing and don't support, please feel free to send them to me, or to register a wishlist item on the Vehicle Tracking Forum off the Civil 3D Forum. We're more than happy to look into adding any libraries that you can supply.
All right, more questions coming in. Can vehicle tracking be used on cross-section to verify the ground clearance of a passenger car going over a drive pad?
So there are 2 vehicle clearance modes. There is a simple single line, so the center line of the road, and drive a vehicle down it, looking from the side. That vehicle clearance is generally used for car parks and multi-story car parks, and is based on the Australian rules for how to calculate it. And there is a second ground clearance report that can be run on any swept path that you've created, as long as you're working in Civil 3D or MicroStation. You select the surface that is existing ground, or the proposed ground that you want to analyze, and the swept path, and it will produce you cross sections of the low points along that path, and it will also give you a heat map of how close you get to grounding. What I would recommend though is you probably need to define your own vehicle. It's not best practice to use a design vehicle because design vehicles other than Australia don't specify ground clearance or accurate side views of the vehicle.
Okay. Next one was about compatibility with MicroStation. So MicroStation Connect or only V8i?
V8i is the only version of MicroStation we support.
Okay. A question about Canadian standards for roundabouts. Is that something we have or something we are looking to add?
We are looking to add it. I have been speaking to one of the Canadian regions for their standards. They hadn't publicly released their standards last time I spoke to them. I know it is due this year.
Okay. Another maybe suggestion to include wheelchairs as a vehicle. Apparently there are requests out there for pathway analysis by some municipalities having to do with wheelchairs. So I don't know if you've heard that one before.
We used to have a bicycle, a wheelchair, a tricycle, and a hospital trolley, gurney trolley,
mm-hmm.
all of which can be modeled successfully with vehicle tracking. They're just not in there. I can't remember why we removed them. But yes, it's a good idea. They're also very fun vehicles to drive around.
All right. I think we're caught up on questions for now. If you want to go to the, I think we're going to do some demo for us.
Okay. So very quickly, I will just go through the values we allow you to define for the elevation of slip lanes, and then I'll just do some demonstrations and show you the true to form. So I'm just trying to work out. Moment a second. So the roundabout lets you define the elevation at the middle of the slip lane based as a relative elevation from the edge of the roundel area. It also allows you to adjust the elevation on the curve somewhere on the curve on the entry side at a given distance around the curve. You can define the transition distance from the incoming road's cross slope to the cross slope along the deceleration area. You can define the transition length from the deceleration area up to the start of the curve cross slope, and you can define the cross slope around the start of the curve, which transitions evenly to the cross slope at the midpoint of the curve, and then the equivalent of those values on the exit. So we're only allowing really 3 PVI points for the elevation, 1 at the center and 2 at the entry, and we're allowing you to transition the cross slope around the curve. There isn't super elevation equations. It is straight across slope. It's just based on cross slope. We contacted a few users and it was felt that these are low speeds, so we didn't need to go the whole 9 yards and do the super elevation equations. So this is a fairly typical roundabout on a surface. So the options, the simplified options we added for the corridor. So again, there are several workflows you can do with the roundabouts here. If you want it to be fully automated, you can tick all these checkboxes. and it will maintain every time you edit the roundabout, it will update the corridor. Or you can decide that you no longer want any of these options to be updated. So going from the bottom up, the bottom option says create a corridor top surface. So if that's ticked, we automatically create you the top surface based on the corridor. The next one is whether or not you want the corridor to be created even if you have not specified the existing ground. It is sometimes quite useful to create the corridor without the existing ground surface. By default, we require you to specify the existing ground, but you can untick that and this corridor will appear even if you haven't got the existing ground defined in your drawing yet. The next one's the most horrible one that I think you're likely to change. Around the outside of the roundabout, so the outer edge of travel way around the entire roundabout, we can add a curb assembly and which has a curb and a simple cut and fill based on the simple AASHTO road assembly that ships with Civil 3D. If you tick that box, we will add a baseline along the alignment and we will target the existing ground for the cut and fill. If you're doing anything more complex or you want your own sidewalk or side assembly or curb, untick that, it will remove it, and you can add your own baselines along the alignment as you want. And then going up, the next 6 options are create the corridor and update the corridor. If you untick update the corridor, we won't update the corridor if you edit the roundabout. The only thing we will do is if you add a new arm, we will add the baselines for the new arm. And if you delete an arm, we will remove them. This is fairly standard. These TOPS options are in the current product.
Quick question, Nigel, if I can interrupt you. The functions that you're showing, the roundabout functions, are these available only with vehicle tracking, or are they also in Civil 3D? And
Right,
maybe you can describe where the line's drawn a bit there.
Okay, so the line is drawn. The roundabout functionality is in native Civil 3D. It was shipped, we first started shipping vehicle tracking roundabout technology in Civil 3D in 2017, so 18 months ago. All the functionality I'm showing at the moment is in Civil 3D. If you've got Civil 3D installed on your machine but do not have vehicle tracking, you will still be notified of this update. Please install it to get the enhanced functionality the update gives. You do not need to use a vehicle tracking license to use this functionality. And if you've got vehicle tracking on your machine and you start Civil and start using this functionality, as long as you don't use any of the other vehicle tracking functionality, no license is needed. It will just use the Civil 3D license. So the boundary is, if you want to do a swept path analysis over the top of this roundabout, you need vehicle tracking. If you're just designing roundabouts, these are the native tools in Civil for roundabout design, and they're included with Civil.
Great clarification. Thank you.
So again, if you untick the create corridor, all we will create for you are the profiles and the alignments. And similarly, you can check, don't update me on my profiles. Roundabouts are interesting. Where the alignments go for the roundabout is pretty much set by the standard. How you create the profiles of your roundabouts and the alignments. The standards do give guidelines, but if you get 5 hard-nosed roundabout designers in the room, you will probably get 15 different answers for exactly how the profile should be done. So it's vehicle tracking does one calculation method for the profiles. It is often a very good starting place, and I know a lot of users that use it for the starting place and then switch off update profiles and then just take manual control over them. If you do that, we won't update the profiles. If we're creating a new profile because we created a new alignment for a new arm, we will create you an initial profile, but then it's up to you to maintain. And similarly applies for alignments. You can use this to create a roundabout in 10 clicks. You can have a roundabout that conforms to the standard, and then you can just delete the vehicle tracking roundabout if you want, and you've got your roundabout corridor and maintain it all yourself. Or you can keep the vehicle tracking roundabout, edit it, maintain it, and allow it to update. There are multiple workflows for this. So even if you're just doing a simple cul-de-sac and you don't necessarily want vehicle tracking roundabout in there, you can create yourself a dead-end cul-de-sac turning circle for a corridor in, again, about 5 clicks. So when you delete the roundabout, you are given the option to maintain or keep any of the controlled entities that it creates. That includes signs, signage, alignments, profiles, curb lines, or corridor. So it is very flexible in the workflows. But we believe you shouldn't be deleting the roundabout. You should let it maintain the corridor for you. So any other questions?
There's one not about roundabouts, but I'm sorry, not about roundabouts, but about another topic. If you want to take it.
Can I carry on and quickly show the updates of the roundabout and how the baselines work, and then I'll go back to vehicle tracking.
Okay.
So when you create a roundabout, this roundabout, again, performance-wise, if you move the center of the roundabout, it will within seconds rebuild the entire corridor, recalculate the elevations, the crossfalls. We support an overall tilted plane for the center of the roundabout. We support 2 crown lines on the roundel. We support slip lanes. Any arm can have a slip lane. We support pedestrian crossings or crosswalks, currently not on slip lanes but on individual arms. The roundabout has visibility reports, fastest line reports are calculated, and swept paths can be driven, and they automatically vehicles automatically drive around the roundabout. We also calculate the fastest lines, R1 to R5 values, and V1 to V5, and the overall fastest line, and we allow deflection. So it's a very flexible, very powerful roundabout design tool, and with each release it's getting better. This release we're particularly proud of. So the roundabout itself, or the corridor itself, is now split into multiple regions or baselines. We haven't used baseline regions on sharing an alignment. We have gone for individual baselines and an alignment per one. We typically, because of the geometry of roundabouts, build the baseline from the curb line in towards the center of the road, and from the curb line in towards the center of the roundabout, or the crown line on the roundel into the center of the roundabout. The reason for that is if you build outwards, you get lots of targeting issues. The cross-fall and cross-slope, our alignments come with calculated profiles and elevations. We're not using cross-fall equations, so we are actually targeting the profiles elevation. So I said, we also cap the verge or cut and fill or curb line is built outwards, again per region, per arm, and we split the entry and exit separately. So I really do encourage you to, if you've got Civil 3D, install the update, or even in native Civil 3D 2018, and just play around with it and see what it will do. Let me know if you've got any questions. We do support lane islands, and we do create models of the lane islands with a large number of parameters. We've added a whole load more with 2018, and I think we added a couple this time. The lane islands can have crosswalks cutting through them and pedestrian refuges in the middle. We believe we support all the calculation methods that are needed for the islands. We do not model them in the corridor, but we do produce a 2D polyline for the curb line of the island. Okay, so that's it for what I wanted to cover on roundabouts. Can I just go through back to the questions that we've got? So we've got a question on standard vehicles, specializing items like hauling components like blades, midsections and wind turbines. We do ship in our specialist library some sample blade vehicles. So with 2017 and the earlier versions of vehicle tracking, there was an additional library download. We removed that download with 2018 and included all the vehicles natively in the product. And they are located in the specialist vehicle. So I'm just trying to remember where it is. Wind turbine farm vehicles. So we ship 2 wind turbine farm vehicles, both of which are designed, I believe, on a European trailer. They are both using rear-steered trailers and link steerage, and I believe are both self-steering, so you can manually steer the rear trailer as you drive. Can we connect roundabout element with linear civil project to generate global report? You can if you change the assemblies we're using on the baselines we generate. If you change the assembly, it will use your assembly. We won't change the assembly being used once we've created it. We only set it at creation time, and we maintain it by updating the alignment. All your assembly needs to do is supply us either a left or right target point or a near side or offside target point. Have a look at our assembly and see, just match what we're doing, and then you can use it. It is a standard Civil 3D corridor, so you can get the standard quantities off that corridor using generic civil reports. Are roundabouts circular or oval? Currently, we only support circular roundabouts. In the roundabout module terms, roundabouts are circles. Do we have any other questions?
I don't believe so, Nigel.
So please feel free to reach out to me and to Eric if you've got any questions, or post them in the Vehicle Tracking Forum on the Autodesk site. I'm just going to remind everyone that it's Civil 3D Answer Day, or the Autodesk Answer Day tomorrow, and I'm more than happy to take vehicle tracking questions in the Answer Day. I will be manning it for the first few hours of Answer Day, but I know the rest of the team in the States will be also looking at roundabout questions there.
All right, great. Thank you, Nigel. I just wanted to remind everyone one more time how to get your hands on this update. There are instructions on installing the update on the community site. You can see the URL right there. As Nigel mentioned earlier, also you can check your Autodesk desktop application or go to manage.autodesk.com. One thing I wanted to reiterate, Nigel, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if you want to see all of the new functionality, even if you just have Civil 3D, if you don't have AVT, you just have Civil 3D, and you want to see the updates to the Roundabout functionality that Nigel showed, then you need to install the AVT 2018.1 update. Is that correct, Nigel?
Yes.
Okay. So that's good information to know. Make sure you're aware of that and that you act accordingly.
I have another additional statement. If you haven't installed, for civil users, if you haven't installed Map Hotfix 1, please do so. It fixes an issue that affects AVT and civil on grip editing. So
great. Thanks for letting us know about that. I wanted to again remind you about our next webcast. This is going to deal with Parts Editor. This impacts InfraWorks and Civil 3D users. Charlie's going to show you how to use the new Parts Editor and maybe even dig into some Inventor to create custom storm parts for your InfraWorks and Civil 3D models. So this is big news. Anyone who's been using Civil 3D for a long time and you're familiar with the old Part Builder solution, we're all very happy to have a new solution for creating custom storm parts. And with that, I want to thank Nigel for giving us all this amazing information about the AVT update and for putting on a great presentation. I want to thank you all for giving us a little bit of your time today. Please come back for the next webcast in 2 weeks. We hope to see you all back for that, and have a wonderful week. Thanks again.